Hyundai has radically reimagined its largest SUV, the Santa Fe. The looks are divisive, but you can't argue with the improvements in space and practicality. And if you're having second thoughts about that family EV, you'll appreciate the frugal hybrid engines. It's a very decent step forward.
It might be all change from a design point of view, but what lies beneath the bonnet here is resolutely familiar. There's no EV powertrain, nor, unlike with this car's close cousin, the Kia Sorento, is there a diesel option. Instead, as with final versions of the previous generation model, you choose between a couple of four-cylinder, 1.6 litre T GDi SmartStream hybrid petrol engines. One of them's a plug-in, which is the one we have here actually. Also carried over from the previous model is the mandatory 6-speed automatic gearbox. Now, if you're expecting a big family SUV like this to handle like a bus, then you might be pleasantly surprised by this Santa Fe. Yes, of course, you would be rather unwise to start throwing the thing around. The light steering really doesn't encourage that anyway, nor does, in fact, the level of body roll that you'll experience when you're pressing on through those tighter turns. But the steering weights up quite progressively, there's plenty of traction, and the square shape and tall driving position make this Hyundai easier to place on narrow lanes than through city streets than you'd think it would be, with over 2.2 meters of body width between the mirrors. Unlike with the Sorento, there's a two-wheel drive option for the core powertrain that most customers choose. That's the 215 PS self-charging HEV hybrid. The base variant makes 0 to 62 in 9.6 seconds. That's 0.2 of a second quicker than the all-wheel drive version, en route to a 112 miles an hour top speed that all Santa Fe's share. In HEV form, the car always tries to set off using its electric motor, but because that motor is energized by a battery just 1.49 kilowatts in size, and it has to tug along 1.9 tons of SUV, silent running of that sort lasts hardly any time at all. Obviously, this PHEV version serves you much better in that regard, although nothing like as well as its rivals, because unlike with much more recently introduced plug-in hybrid competitors, Hyundai, rather disappointingly, hasn't taken the opportunity to increase the size of the drive system's battery. Not many PHEVs these days, except this model's near identically engineered Sorento cousin, still retain a battery just 13.8 kilowatt hours in size, and that really hurts this Hyundai when it comes to EV range. It's AER rated at just 33.6 miles. The PHEV comes with mandatory four-wheel drive and gets a power hike over the hybrid to 253 PS to compensate for the extra weight, although because the 265 Nm torque figure remains the same as the HEV, there's no real performance benefit. Rest to 62 miles an hour takes 9.3 seconds. With both powertrains, brake regen paddles are provided behind the steering wheel, although the stronger settings really aren't that strong. And there is a fascia button to switch between EV and HEV drive for when the battery will stand it, although there's no option to save EV range until later in the trip. Hyundai's chief designer, Sang-Yup Lee, clearly wanted a complete departure from the previous generation model. That had a conservative visual vibe that the brand has now completely abandoned. The squarical, rugged, practical look of this replacement certainly won't be to everyone's taste, but for this kind of car, it's currently a look which is very much in. It's a trend started by the current Land Rover Defender. Senior Vice President of Design, Simon Lowsby, calls it a brick, which doesn't sound very complimentary, but this Mark V shape clearly has what its predecessors always lacked: pavement presence. Styling then that goes its own way outside, but will it be the same in the cabin? Well, to some extent, yes. There's no attempt here to follow the class trend towards an overtly premium ambiance, and you certainly wouldn't think you were in a posher branded model, but everything feels solidly assembled and of strong wipe clean quality. There's even more of a horizontal vibe with this dash design, emphasised by ambient lighting strips that frame the bottom and sides of the central fascia panel. As usual with Hyundais these days, a pair of gently curved, joined up 12.3-inch screens dominate the dash, and that suggests a level of media tech that the driver's supervision instrument cluster really doesn't deliver on. There are no fancy layout options, nor can you bring full screen mapping into your line of sight. On the plus side, the two circular dial spaces, MPH on the left and a power meter on the right, incorporate the brand's clever blind spot monitoring system, becoming little side flank screens when you indicate. Everything else you might need to know is, of course, on this central touchscreen nav system monitor, which, as usual with Hyundai Motor Group cars, has a home screen which displays either with customizable widget sections. Here we have navigation, audio and the PHEV section, or if you swipe left, with rows of little icons. What else? Well, you sit commandingly and predictably. The boxy, glassy shape gives you great all-round visibility. So let's take a look in the second row. Here in the centre of the car, it's certainly spacious. Legroom this time around is improved by 35 millimetres. As before, this bench slides and reclines by up to 10 degrees. It can accommodate 3 adults thanks to this low-set centre tunnel, above which is a deep pull-out drawer. One of quite a few unusual touches back here, actually. To access the rearmost part of the car, you press on this button on the second row seat shoulder. That slides it forward out of the way. As usual with a car in this segment, though, there is quite a climb up. And once you get yourself into the very back, there's the usual bum-low, knees-high seating position, which is better suited to kids, which is usually in this class. This part of the Santa Fe is mainly designed for. Still, adults relegated back here will be better off than they would be with most other models in this segment, and the big square side windows make it feel less claustrophobic than you'd expect too. Let's finish with a look in the boot, the aperture for which is exceptionally wide. Once this huge tailgate rises, despite the boxy shape, it's no surprise to find that with all 3 rows in place like this, there's hardly any luggage space. Push the third row pews into the floor, which has to be done manually, and things improve hugely, of course. 628 litres of space is freed up, a figure that falls only fractionally to 621 with this PHEV model. If you want to go further and flatten the second row, there are switches to do that on the right. Although they only flatten the seats, they can't then raise them up again. With everything retracted, there's up to 1,949 litres of space with the hybrid, or up to 1,942 with this PHEV. Not everyone's going to like the radically changed look, but at least it'll now be difficult for prospective segment buyers to ignore it. If you like the visual statement this car makes, you'll really like it, which isn't something you could have said about any of this model's predecessors. It manages to be a lot more practical this time around too. There is apparently a trend in South Korea for campers to sleep in their cars instead of in a tent, and you could almost do that in this one. So it's an adventurous SUV and a family wagon and a school-run statement all rolled into one. And it'll attract a whole new breed of buyers too, who previously never would have considered a Santa Fe.